Hello, my name is Cole Adair, and I go to the University of Windsor. Today, we'll be talking about the double victimization of criminalized women in neoliberal contexts, the case of Paraguay. Our agenda for today. First, we will go over the introduction, then the existing literature, then we'll talk about our research question, our data and methods, we will go through our findings, and then we will conclude on our topic. For our introduction, neoliberalism is characterized by free market trade and the deregulation of financial markets. Neoliberalism is globally ascending, causing a lot of issues such as female criminalization. We are going to be looking at the direct relationship between a neoliberalist government and its state violence and criminality of women. State violence against women is a serious matter, and women could be more vulnerable and highly incarcerated under a neoliberalist government. Following Paraguay's terrible dictatorship, they started to trend toward a neoliberal government in 1989. However, although Paraguay made slight advancements, the country was still riddled with poverty and poor education. And above all, the incarceration of women has risen tremendously. According to the World Prison Brief in 2016, as Paraguay moved away from dictatorship, the incarceration rose from 60 to 199 prisoners per 100,000 Paraguayans. In this presentation, we will take an in-depth look at the neoliberal ideologies, impoverishment, criminalization, and incarceration of women in Paraguay. Now, for our existing literature. In 2008, Henry Buhmüller noted that rather than seeking to systematically give women the tools to avoid dependency, and thus violence, the neoliberal state has systematically criminalized violence against women. This has effectively shifted the blame for women's abuse from patriarchy as a social problem onto individual men portrayed as violent criminals acting against individual women. This is important as it provides an indication that there needs to be action taken against the situation of women abuse as a whole rather than individual people. Also, as Feynman in 2010 and Summers in 2008 argue, neither the effective ability to participate in the nation as a full citizen nor the vulnerability to abuse in the absence of state protection are equally distributed among nationals. This is important as it portrays the fact that women are uniquely vulnerable within society and do not get the same treatment as men. Next, in 2009, Wacant theorizes that the marginalization of surplus labor in neoliberal regimes is enacted primarily through the criminalization of impoverished groups. These impoverished groups are primarily women, putting strain on the feminist ideology within Paraguay. Furthermore, a singular conception positions double victimization as the rough, onerous, and often insulting treatment of victims at the hands of law enforcement. This is substantial as it provides more insight on the mistreatment of women at the hands of state officials in Paraguay. Regarding authoritarian neoliberalism, Paraguay has inflated rates of incarceration fourfold since its transition from normal authoritarianism, and that's from the Institute of Criminal Policy Research in 2016. Following Paraguay's change from an authoritarian government to a neoliberal government, incarceration rates have gone up, leaving women in Paraguay vulnerable. Incarceration in neoliberal regimes, the Paraguayan prison population has grown approximately 400% since the year 2000. In the same period, the number of female prisoners has quadrupled. Incarceration in Paraguay is rising because of the switching government, bringing up a tremendous issue for women and citizens in Paraguay. Incarcerated women, as well as men, are in prisons without any guarantee of food, access to water, health, education, work, or recreation. Prisons in Paraguay are not humane as they are being overcrowded, meanwhile, their basic life necessities are not being met. And on this slide, you can see a picture of a prison in Paraguay. For our research question, do women being victimized and criminalized in neoliberal Paraguay suffer from more state violence while incarcerated in Paraguayan prisons? Now, our data and methods. From a methodology standpoint, we decided to take a mixed method approach covering both quantitative and qualitative data. We decided to survey 785 incarcerated women, which is 96.5% of the population of women incarcerated in Paraguay. Next, we will extensively interview 11 more incarcerated women that provide interest for the article. For quantitative data, we intended to survey all incarcerated women in Paraguay across all 5 of the prisons containing women. Within the survey, questions regarded experiences within the prison, such as violence from the state and hardships within the prisons. For qualitative data, interviews were conducted with permission and were voluntarily audio recorded. More personal questions, such as criminal background and family history, were asked. Now for our findings. Undereducation and illiteracy were very common among women incarcerated in Paraguay, as 83% of female prisoners surveyed were undereducated and 84% were illiterate. This is not surprising, however, as many of the women discussed poverty and the neoliberalist government affecting their ability to receive an education. Compared to other people in Paraguay, women incarcerated were far more riddled with poverty and unemployed than others. For many, poverty often led to crime. Many female inmates suffered from living in a housing shelter from a very young age. This proved to be problematic as it led to drug use and violence. Abuse was very common for women in Paraguay, as around 1 in 3 women were hurt while being arrested from a state agent, such as a police officer. Since being arrested, around 29% of the women that were incarcerated have been robbed by a state agent, such as a police officer. Furthermore, sexual violence is very common within this scenario. To conclude, neoliberalism has made it very difficult for women in Paraguay, as it often forced many women into the drug or sex trade. This is terrible, as it often leads to incarceration. While incarcerated, many women receive both physical and sexual abuse from members of the state, rendering them very vulnerable in nearly every situation. Prisons in Paraguay for women are very harsh, as a lot of life's basic necessities are not met. Necessities such as food, water, and space are not taken into account by members of the state in Paraguay. Things need to change. Here are the references used in this presentation. Thank you for listening.